What if everything you want in life, peace, clarity, control, comes not when you push harder, but when you let go? Most men are taught to grip tighter when life slips, to chase harder when things feel out of reach. But what if that very instinct is the reason you feel exhausted, anxious, and stuck? If you've been trying to control everything, always planning the outcome, always fighting the tide, this message is for you. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell you to surrender. It teaches you how to win smarter, how to stop reacting and start responding, how to stop forcing outcomes and start aligning with what actually works. In this guide, we'll show you why letting go isn't weakness, it's precision. It's how high-performing men reclaim their energy, rebuild emotional detachment, and move forward with strength that doesn't scream. It endures. You're not the only one burned out by pressure, confused by chaos, or tired of being emotionally hijacked. You're not alone in feeling like you've lost yourself in the chase. But here's the truth. Everything changes when you stop worshiping control and start mastering your response. So if you're ready to discover the power of acceptance, the benefits of emotional detachment, and how to build an unbeatable mindset through timeless Stoic tools, this is your turning point. Like the video, subscribe for more Stoic self-mastery, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's begin. 1. Stop gripping the rope that's burning your hands. You think you're holding on because you're strong, because you care, because men like you don't quit. But look closer. What if the rope you're gripping is the very thing tearing you apart? Imagine dragging yourself through life with a fraying rope in your hands. You believe pulling harder will get you where you need to go, but every inch forward cuts deeper. That's what emotional over-control feels like. That's what happens when you refuse to let go of outcomes, people, timelines, and expectations that are long past their use. But you keep holding on because control makes you feel powerful, even when it's hollow. Let's name it for what it is. Gripping harder isn't always discipline. Sometimes it's fear dressed up as effort. Sometimes it's your pride whispering that peace only comes after you win, after you prove something. And so you carry the burden further, tighter, bleeding internally while telling the world, "I'm fine." That's not a strength. That's self-sabotage in slow motion. Stoic philosophy cuts through this illusion. It doesn't tell you to abandon effort. It tells you to redirect it, to stop wasting energy on what you can't control, and start investing it in your clarity, your calm, your response. Epictetus said it plainly. It's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. You don't need to grip every situation to be in command. In fact, the tighter your grip, the more the situation controls you. Letting go is not escape, it's strategic detachment. It's dropping the unnecessary so you can move with purpose. Too many men confuse emotional detachment with weakness. But Stoicism reframes it as mastery. Detachment isn't running, it's remaining steady. It's the difference between fighting the waves and learning how to float. Most of your internal chaos doesn't come from life being unfair. It comes from your refusal to accept what's already true. The deal ended, the relationship changed, the plan failed. But instead of adapting, you fight the current, thinking your resistance will save you. It won't. Only surrendering to what is gives you a path forward. You've probably been told to stay strong. That's fine, but the world never taught you when to release. It taught you how to hold on, but not how to heal. Real strength is knowing when something no longer serves your growth. When you learn that, you stop bleeding for things that don't love you back. So what can you do now? Start here. Today, choose one thing you've been gripping too tightly. A mistake from the past, a person who's pulled away, a future that's not unfolding fast enough. Don't fight it. Don't over-explain it. Just pause. Let your breath loosen it. Let your silence hold it. Then ask yourself, if I let go of this, do I lose power or finally reclaim it? That's your quiet revolution. That's how letting go becomes strength, not surrender. And that's how you stop the rope from burning deeper into your hands, by finally deliberately releasing it. Not because you gave up, but because you grew up. 2. Release pressure, regain power. There's a quiet weight pressing on many men's shoulders, unspoken but constant. It's not from the outside, it comes from within. The weight of needing to be there by now. The belief that if you're not winning fast, you're falling behind. That pressure, it doesn't sharpen your edge, it dulls your focus. You think urgency is pushing you forward, but in reality, it's pulling you apart. You wake up already sprinting in your mind, comparing timelines, chasing shadows, and calling it discipline. But discipline without clarity is just noise with a badge. We've been conditioned to measure worth by speed. The faster you rise, the more you matter. The earlier you succeed, the more respected you are. But this mindset kills more dreams than failure ever could. Because when you mistake pressure for purpose, you confuse anxiety for ambition. And every goal becomes a ticking clock instead of a meaningful pursuit. You don't breathe, you brace. Now pause here. What if real power doesn't rise from tension, but from stillness? What if letting go of pressure is not laziness, but the path back to presence? Marcus Aurelius never chased time. He used it. He accepted every delay as part of the design, not a defect. He understood that some victories arrive quietly, only when you're not watching the clock. That's the Stoic lens. Focus on what's in your hands, not on what hasn't landed yet. Most men don't burn out because the dream was too big. They collapsed because the timeline was too tight. They build a mental prison around their goals, believing success must look a certain way by a certain age. And when it doesn't, they spiral, not from lack of effort, but from inner war. The enemy was never the goal. It was the pressure built around it. There's a better way. It begins with loosening your grip on the calendar and tightening your grip on the process. You still show up, you still push forward, but you do it without the chokehold of expectation. You no longer ask, when will it happen? Instead, you ask, what's the best move I can make right now? That shift breaks the mental noise and anchors you to action. No more waiting for clarity. No more outsourcing peace to results. So here's what you can do. Wake up tomorrow and remove one timeline that's suffocating you. Stop telling yourself you have to get there by a certain month or year. Drop that artificial deadline. Replace it with daily precision. Write down the action, not the outcome. Track what you control, not what you hope for. Trade speed for consistency, trade pressure for presence, and trade noise for grounded execution. That's not slowing down, that's locking in. When you release pressure, you regain power. Not just over your work, but over your energy, your emotions, and your clarity. You become a man who's not shaken by how long it takes, but sharpened by how well he moves. The world doesn't reward the loudest, it rewards the most aligned. So align, quit the clock, trust your pace, stay in the process, and let the result unfold when it's ready, not when you demand it. 3. Choose flow over force. You were never meant to push through every wall. But somewhere along the way, someone told you that force equals strength, that if you just try harder, grind longer, and fight louder, life will reward you. But life doesn't work like concrete. It works like water. And the more you thrash inside it, the more you sink. You think effort is always the answer. But sometimes what you need isn't more muscle, it's alignment. Force is rigid. It demands. It controls. Flow, on the other hand, doesn't ask for submission. It asks for awareness. You stop crashing against everything that doesn't move, and instead you start moving around it. Like a river that bends, curves, adjusts, yet never forgets its direction. That's not weakness. That's precision. That's power, refined. The Stoics weren't passive men, they were disciplined. But their discipline came from understanding the current, not fighting it. They embraced what the Taoists called wu wei, non-forcing, not by doing nothing, but by doing what fits. When you act from flow, you're not retreating, you're conserving your energy for what actually moves. You stop throwing yourself at closed doors and start walking toward open ones. Most men confuse chaos with challenge. They think the harder path must be the right one. But if your entire life feels like resistance, if every day feels like pushing a boulder uphill, maybe it's not courage driving you. Maybe it's your ego refusing to listen. Maybe you're so obsessed with proving something that you've forgotten the purpose behind it. Force makes everything a battle. Flow makes every move count. You see this everywhere. Men forcing relationships to stay alive that have already died. Men forcing outcomes that never belonged to them. Men are forcing time to move faster because they're afraid of being forgotten. But pressure doesn't make time obey, and desperation never produces peace. Only alignment does. Only presence, awareness, and adaptability. That shift away from force and into flow begins with stillness. You stop reacting. You stop lunging at every opportunity. You pause, observe, and adjust. You ask not, how do I win today? But where is the energy already moving? And how do I move with it? And in that question lies your return to sanity. Force is noise. Flow is clarity. Here's something to try. Identify one area in your life where you're applying pressure that isn't working. A project, a relationship, a goal. Ask yourself, am I moving with wisdom or just forcing motion? Then let go of what's stuck. Don't give up. Just stop pushing. Step sideways. Try another path. Recalibrate. You don't have to abandon discipline. You just have to stop swinging at everything that moves. The Stoics would say, act in accordance with nature. That means understanding timing. It means knowing when to strike and when to hold. It means flowing without losing direction. So be like water, patient, quiet, but always moving. Not everything can be broken open. Some things must be outlived, some must be walked around. And in that shift, you don't lose power. You gain it because you're no longer wasting strength where there is no progress. You're channeling it where it finally matters. That's not passivity, that's mastery in motion. 4. Stop worshiping control. Start practicing response. You've been told your whole life that control is power. That if you can plan far enough, prepare deep enough, and dominate every moving part, you'll be safe. You'll win. But there's a silent truth most men don't admit until it breaks them. Control is a lie. You never had it. Not over time, not over people, not over how the world twists your plans without warning. But you do have one thing no one can take, your response. And that's where the real strength lives. Control is seductive because it feels like certainty. You plan your career, your income, your future, your legacy. But then the economy crashes. The deal falls through. Someone walks away, illness hits, the plan dies. And with it, your sense of power. That's where most men fall. Not because life hit them, but because they built their strength on illusions. Stoicism doesn't promise a life without storms. It gives you the tools to remain unshaken within them. When Epictetus spoke of the dichotomy of control, he didn't mean to make you passive. He meant to give you focus. There are only two categories: what is up to you and what isn't. That's it. You don't get to control outcomes, but you control what you say, how you act, what you believe, and what you tolerate. The rest? Noise. And the more you try to master what isn't yours, the more powerless you feel over what is. Most modern men fall into the same trap. They overinvest in controlling people, timelines, outcomes, and reputation. Then they underinvest in their own emotional response, mental clarity, or personal standards. It's backward. They're so busy trying to manage the world that they forget how to lead themselves. And when the world doesn't obey, they unravel. Not because they're weak, but because they put their peace in someone else's hands. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine waking up and saying, today, I don't control what the world throws at me, but I do control how I carry myself. I control the energy I bring into every room. I control the standards I set for my work, my voice, my boundaries. That mindset doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. You stop wasting your fire on battles you can't win and start applying it where it actually creates change. This isn't about emotionless detachment. It's about sharp, intentional ownership. You no longer panic when plans shift. You adapt. You no longer need people to behave a certain way for you to stay calm. You've trained your nervous system to hold steady. And that's the man people trust. The one who doesn't flinch. The one who doesn't beg for control, because he already owns the most important territory, himself. So try this. The next time something doesn't go your way, before you react, pause. One breath, one moment. Ask, is this in my control? Or is this where I get to show what I control? That small shift turns chaos into clarity. You won't need to raise your voice. You won't need to explain yourself. You'll just respond with calm precision. And that's when the world starts to adjust. Not because you forced it to, but because you mastered the only thing that ever mattered, your own response. 5. Let go of the timeline. Stay committed to the process. You were told to set goals, mark dates, and stay on schedule. And you did. But now you wake up every day feeling behind, like you're chasing something that keeps moving just a step faster than you. That invisible timeline has become a quiet tyrant. It doesn't speak loudly, but it controls everything. You don't just want success, you want it by now. And when now doesn't deliver, frustration creeps in. Not because you're failing, but because your clock said you should have arrived already. But here's the shift most men miss. Letting go of the timeline is not letting go of your ambition. It's letting go of the illusion that your timeline controls your value. You're not late. You're not behind. You're simply addicted to an idea of when things should happen. That addiction creates emotional chaos. You start measuring your self-worth against a deadline you made up in your head and forgot to update when life shifted. There's a different way to live, and it's not slow. It's steady. The Stoics never measured life by the clock. They measured it by virtue, by effort, by internal clarity. Marcus Aurelius never said, "Be successful by 40." He said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's what men forget when they panic over timing. They forget that becoming is not a countdown. It's a discipline. When you're too attached to the timeline, you start skipping the process. You rush conversations, you ignore signals, you force decisions, you chase momentum instead of building mastery. You move fast but not deep. And then when things don't land on time, you think you failed. Not because you did the wrong thing, but because you looked at the wrong clock. Most men don't burn out from the journey. They burn out from the expectation that the journey should have ended by now. Letting go of the timeline doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you stop measuring progress by the finish line. You start measuring it by how you handle today. You stop saying, "I should be further," and start asking, "Am I still aligned?" That shift doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful. You stop outsourcing your peace to a calendar. You bring it back to your habits. Here's what to do. Take one goal that's been haunting you, not because it's wrong, but because your deadline turned it into pressure. Now break it apart. Forget the year. Forget the milestone. Just ask, what is the smallest action I can take today that honors this pursuit without feeding my anxiety? Do that, and only that. No countdown, no scoreboard, just presence. This is the core of Stoic progress. You don't rush growth, you cultivate it. You don't grip the future, you step into it, one act at a time. And ironically, when you stop rushing to arrive, you move faster, because now your energy isn't leaking into fear, it's anchored in action. You stop being driven by the question, "When will I make it?" and instead live by the principle, "What kind of man am I becoming by the way I move today?" That shift doesn't just buy you peace, it buys you longevity. And in the long game, the men who stay consistent always surpass the ones who only sprint. Let go of the clock, stay loyal to the craft, and watch what happens when you stop trying to arrive and start choosing to build. 6. Stop chasing, start attracting. You've been sprinting, and maybe you've gotten good at it. Chasing success, chasing approval, chasing clarity, chasing peace. You call it ambition, you call it discipline, but somewhere in that pursuit, you've lost something, your center. When a man spends too long in pursuit, he forgets how to stand still. And here's the truth most won't say aloud. The more you chase what you crave, the more it slips from you. Not because you're weak, but because chasing is often fueled by the fear of not having, not by the clarity of knowing you already are. The Stoics would say that craving is a kind of slavery. Not because desire is wrong, but because when it owns you, you are no longer acting, you're reacting. And when everything becomes a reaction, you become unstable. You move not from purpose, but from pressure. You don't attract calm, you radiate chaos. You don't attract trust, you emit neediness. And life, like people, senses that. There's a law to this. Modern thinkers call it the backwards law. The more you try to feel happy, the more you notice that you're not. The more you try to look confident, the more you betray your insecurity. And the more you try to control someone's attention, the more they pull away. Not because life is cruel, but because control is heavy. It suffocates. It blocks the natural flow of connection, energy, and growth. The shift happens when you stop running toward something and start becoming someone. The man who attracts is the man who builds. He doesn't chase peace, he protects his energy. He doesn't chase love, he radiates self-respect. He doesn't chase validation, he speaks the truth and lets others choose how to respond. And that's what Stoic strength looks like. Calm, not because life is easy, but because you are no longer trying to earn your worth through results. Chasing is tied to outcome obsession. You think if I get this, then I'll be secure. But every time you hit the goalpost moves. That's the game of the ego. It always demands more. But the man who detaches from outcome doesn't become indifferent. He becomes dangerous. Because now he acts without desperation. He no longer needs the applause to validate the process. His presence becomes enough. And that presence pulls everything toward him. Opportunity, clarity, respect, not through force, but through alignment. So here's the practice. Pick one thing in your life you've been chasing, an answer, a reaction, a breakthrough. Stop demanding it. Stop refreshing the result. Step back and ask, what kind of man attracts this outcome without asking for it? Then become that man. Quietly, daily, without announcement. Watch what changes, not just outside but inside. There's more power in rooted stillness than in panicked motion. The oak tree doesn't chase the wind, it grounds itself and lets the wind come. You are not weak for slowing down. You are wise for stepping into your own gravity. Because once you do, what's meant to find you no longer has to be chased. It simply arrives, and it stays. Not because you begged for it, but because you had the strength to stop chasing and become the kind of man it can rest with. 7. Use acceptance as a weapon, not surrender. You've been trained to treat acceptance like a white flag, a quiet defeat, something a man does when he has no other options left. But that's only because the world has confused surrender with strategy. In truth, acceptance is not what weak men turn to, it's what strong men start with. Because when you stop wasting time fighting reality, you unlock the power to shape what happens next. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what happened. It doesn't mean you approve of the loss, the betrayal, the failure, the curveball. It means you stop denying that it happened. And that shift, subtle as it is, changes everything. Most suffering doesn't come from what occurred. It comes from your internal resistance to it. You argue with the past, you replay what should have been, you wrestle against things already written. And all that energy you could have used to rebuild is spent on trying to rewrite what you can't. The Stoics never treated pain like a surprise. They saw it as a part of the pattern. Marcus Aurelius said, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny." Not to justify every blow, but to face it cleanly, with no illusions, no whining, no delay. Because once you accept, you're no longer reacting blindly. You're choosing deliberately. And that's when you become dangerous, not because you control the world, but because the world can no longer shake your center. Too often, modern men believe that fighting is the only way to prove strength. But some battles aren't meant to be won. Some are meant to be seen for what they are. Unwinnable, unnecessary, or simply over. And if you don't recognize that, you'll keep swinging long after the fight ended. You'll burn out trying to fix what doesn't want to be fixed. You'll break yourself trying to change what's already done. But the man who accepts, adapts. He doesn't cling to the fantasy. He doesn't pretend things are fine. He sees the fire, feels the burn, and steps forward anyway. That's not defeat. That's clarity forged through courage. He knows the difference between what deserves endurance and what requires release, and he doesn't confuse pride with purpose. Acceptance isn't his retreat, it's his weapon. Because it clears the emotional fog and lets him move with precision. So what does this look like in your life? Identify one thing you keep trying to rewrite. Maybe it's a failed relationship. Maybe it's the version of yourself you thought you'd be by now. Maybe it's a mistake that still echoes in your chest. Don't numb it. Don't rationalize it. Name it. Face it. Then say the words, "This happened. I no longer resist it. I respond from here." And that last part is the pivot. Respond from here, not from where you wish you were, not from who you hoped they'd be. From now. From this version of you, wiser, bruised maybe, but awake. Let go of the tug of war with fate, not because you lost, but because you finally chose to lead. That's what Stoic power looks like. Not the man shouting into the void, but the man who sees what is, accepts it fully, and still chooses to move. Silently, precisely, forward. 8. Fall in love with the uncontrollable. You try to hold it all together. The schedule, the relationships, the money, the legacy. You grip it tight because you believe that if you let go, it all falls apart. But what if the opposite is true? What if letting go is not the end of control, but the beginning of freedom? What if your peace doesn't come from managing the chaos, but from no longer needing it to behave? We're taught to fear the uncontrollable, to fight it, to calculate every risk, predict every turn. But life doesn't follow your script. It never has. It rains on the days you need sun, it ends chapters before you're ready, it throws you into rooms you never planned to walk into. And the more you resist, the more exhausted you become. Not because life is too wild, but because you've spent too long trying to tame what was never yours to command. The Stoics didn't flinch at uncertainty. They stared it down and called it what it was, a teacher. Epictetus had no riches, no rank, no guarantee, but he had mastery over his mind. And from that place, he didn't just accept fate, he loved it. Amor fati, the fierce devotion to what is, not just tolerating it, not just enduring it, but choosing to see everything, even the painful, the unpredictable, the unwanted, as necessary to your path. That is power beyond logic. That is inner liberation. The mistake most men make is thinking they need control to feel secure. But control is a fragile god. It breaks the moment the unexpected arrives. A phone call in the night, a job lost, a truth exposed. Then what? The man who required certainty crumbles. But the man who practiced loving uncertainty stands up. Because he didn't build himself on guarantees. He built himself on values, on direction, on the understanding that while the path bends and burns, he doesn't have to break with it. You don't grow by resisting what happens. You grow by shaping who you are in response to what happens. Life doesn't owe you comfort. It owes you nothing. But you owe yourself the truth. And the truth is, some of the greatest breakthroughs come dressed as disruption. Some of the most meaningful transformations start with letting go of what made you feel safe. You don't need to know what's next. You need to show up grounded in who you are, no matter what's next. Let go of the obsession with, why did this happen? And start asking, what can this build in me? Let go of the false belief that security comes from prediction. It comes from presence, from stillness, from standing firm in storms because you've already made peace with the wind. Try this. Think of something uncertain in your life right now. Something you can't solve, fix, or guarantee. Instead of feeding fear, feed discipline. Feed awareness. Sit with the discomfort. Breathe through the temptation to run. Then say aloud, I accept this. I trust myself in this. I don't need to control it to learn from it. That's how amor fati begins, not as a philosophy, but as a choice. Not as a concept, but as a posture. And in that choice, you'll find something most men never touch. Peace that doesn't depend on conditions. Strength that doesn't need applause. And clarity that only comes after the fight inside you has gone quiet. Not because life got easier, but because you no longer demand it to. You simply live it, love it, and let it shape you. The world will keep asking you to grip tighter, to chase faster, to control more. But the deepest strength a man can build does not come from domination. It comes from detachment. What you've heard today is not theory, it's a daily discipline. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about growing up. It's the moment you stop being a prisoner of outcomes and become the master of your response. You've seen how holding on can hurt more than it helps. You've learned that the constant need for control creates emotional chaos. That chasing approval weakens your power. Those timelines built on pressure, presence. And that true transformation begins the moment you stop forcing life and start flowing with it. This isn't a lesson you hear once and carry forever. It's a mindset you must return to every day. In moments of frustration, pause. In moments of fear, breathe. When the world pulls at your emotions, remember, your power lives in stillness, not reaction. Build emotional detachment, not as armor, but as clarity. Accept what is out of your hands. Sharpen what is within them. And trust that from that place of quiet focus, you become not just calm, but unbeatable. Use this video as your mirror. Revisit these principles, write them down, reflect on them, then act without noise, without rush, without ego. The world doesn't need louder men, it needs clearer ones, steady ones, ones who lead themselves first. Now it's your turn. Share in the comments. What are you learning to let go of? What daily practice is helping you detach with strength? Your story may be the guide someone else needs. Let this be your reminder, not to grip harder, but to let go with purpose. And in doing so, reclaim everything that's already waiting within you.